so much for joining us today. We have a lot of representatives from 𝐘𝐶L, including Paulina from General Admissions, and we will introduce each other when the time comes to your section. So Paulina, thank you so much for joining us. COVID has been a very challenging time for all of us over the past year and a half. How have things been at 𝐘𝐶L, and how have both the faculty and students coped with this unprecedented pandemic?
Things have been a little bit difficult. We had to adjust very quickly, and things have changed very quickly and are continuing changing fast here in UK. At the moment, they're changing for the better, so we're all hoping it's going to stay like that. Today here with me is one of the international students, Valerie, and she will be able to share some more information on how that have impacted our students.
So any best practices put in place to help students? In particular, 𝐘𝐶L is quite well known for the science subjects, where practicum is part of the program. So any best practices put in place to help them bridge this challenge?
Yes, we have a series of practices put in place, and that will allow our students, both based in UK as well as those who remain at home, to study and to make the most of our education. Again, Valerie is a great example. She's our medical student, so she will be able to tell you all about what's it like to have online lab section. And I believe Professor 𝐘𝐤 would also be able to share some information on how those science subjects have been approached, and how the perhaps time zone difference have been bridged between our staff here in UK and our students abroad.
Perfect. We'll explore further later with Valerie and also Professor Rode. And over the past year, despite COVID, we have seen quite a spike in interest in UK education in general, in particular tertiary. According to data, there's a lot of increase from China and also even United States. Do you see the same trend when it comes to admissions for 𝐘𝐶L?
Very much so. So our admissions team, I'm actually part of the international team, but we have Laura and Dan here, and I'm sure they will confirm that their year was busier than ever. We actually seen over 17% spike in our undergraduate applications, and both USA and China are growing. Numbers from China have tripled within the last 5 years, and our USA number are growing too. We actually received a bigger increase in numbers from USA this year than any other university in UK. So yes, we're very much seeing the spike in numbers across the world, but particularly from USA, India, and China.
Do you know what are the reasons behind that? Do the students say anything in their personal statement why they want to move from US to UK?
I believe the USA students find UK education attractive for a number of reasons. One, most of the UK degrees, they only study for 3 years, comparing to the 4 years to complete their degrees in USA. Also, the UK education system offers more emphasis on sort of one major, and that allows students to really immerse themselves in the subjects that they would like to study. And I believe that comparing to USA fees, UK is actually a great value for money.
Yeah. Any kind of new subjects or faculties that are being established at 𝐘𝐶L?
Yes, we have established several new subjects. So I'm going to start from our engineering offering, which is growing. And this is coming together with our brand new facilities and our new but already very popular general engineering degree. And I've got my colleague Zara here. Zara have actually studied for undergraduate, postgraduate, and now PhD studies here at King's. It's all within the engineering department. And she's now a teaching assistant too. So she will be able to talk all about the engineering degrees and what sort of students we look for and what the new exciting facilities we have here at King's. The other popular subject is the new social sciences BA. And this is for students who want to learn to change the world and make the difference in the world. And this subject is looking into relevant real world issues. So you would be looking at campaigns, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, green politics, new social media, fake news, and really the stuff that we're seeing on the TV now. We also opened a contemporary degree called Culture, Media and Creative Industries, and this is looking into how the cultural and creative industries operate, what sort of impact they have on our life, how do we as humans influence the media and the creative industries. and they sort of look at variety of topics. So they look at stuff that is more new, film, games, and immersive technology, but also on the stuff that is more traditional, such as museums, heritage, or the contemporary art.
I can really see how KCL's subject offerings are really evolving dynamically and quite creatively to align with the new generation of students' interests. More interdisciplinary, more practical, more immersive learning.
Very much so, and something that we see in Hong Kong, we do see a spike in application. We see a spike in interest for subjects, not just the traditional sort of medicine and science, but we are now seeing spike in interest in arts and humanities as well as social sciences subjects. So I do believe that we're probably going to get some applications from Hong Kong for some of those subjects.
Thank you so much, Paulina. We'll come back to you perhaps at the very end of the interview, and I shall move on to, hi, Professor Rode.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today, representing a really popular subject now for Hong Kong students, biomedical engineering. So in the past, when students go for engineering, they really just know the general engineering course. And now more and more top universities are dissecting engineering into subsects. So please tell us a little bit more about biomedical engineering. What does it involve, and what kind of students are you looking for?
Yeah, so biomedical engineering, I mean, it really fits well with King's mission statement and ethos, all about serving society and improving society. So it's engineering like all other types of engineering, in that we're going to be designing things, building them, testing them. But really the focus is building the technology for healthcare, and really to look at improving the well-being and the health of society. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what biomedical engineering is. So it's really engineering applied to healthcare.
So at a secondary level, students rarely have exposure to biomedical sciences. They may have exposure to biology, but less so biomedical sciences and less so engineering. So what do you look for in a student's application to kind of sift out the ones who are interested in sciences and the ones interested in biomedical engineering in particular?
Well, actually, biomedical engineering is unique amongst the different engineering disciplines in that really it's the most cross-cutting across the STEM subject. So really, what are we looking for? We're looking for students that really enjoy all the different types of STEM areas. So biology, maths, physics, chemistry, and so forth. And because it basically, biomedical engineering includes all of those different areas. In fact, it is probably the broadest engineering discipline. So anyone who really doesn't want to give up any particular STEM subject, I mean, the ideal choice would be to come and do biomedical engineering, because you're going to get all of it for 3 or 4 years at King's.
Yeah, that sounds great. I guess biomedical is biochemistry and engineering has a physics, maths part. That's true. So any kind of interesting projects or problems they solve at undergraduate level?
Yeah, I mean, one of the unique features of studying biomedical engineering at King's is that we are the largest biomedical engineering group in the whole of Europe. And that is really advantageous for our students because they get to work with a very large range of ongoing projects. So the project work that the students do is just getting involved in the current research that we're doing as a department. And our research covers a plethora of areas. So obviously in the last year, we've been contributing to the COVID effort, not just for the UK, but for the world. But the other areas will include things like imaging technologies, medical robotic technologies, AI technologies, and also designing smart molecules that can be used to target particular diseases so they can be identified and treated in a better way.
Wow, that sounds really exciting and very, very much in line with the next 20, 30 years of scientific development. So this course is new, or has it been around for a few years?
Well, we are one of the relatively newest and most innovative courses in the UK. We've been running since 2012, and believe it or not, that makes it quite recent, certainly amongst the Russell Group universities. And the course, I would, despite being originated in 2012, I would say every year we make changes really to align the course with the needs of society and the opportunities that students need to get the right careers and to progress. So it's continually evolving. For example, in the last few years, we've added a lot of focus on machine learning and artificial intelligence, because that's where there's good demand for graduates at the moment.
So mentioning graduates, what do they usually go into? Because as you said, it's quite a broad program.
We have a wonderful alumni group that we just recently started on LinkedIn. What we've found is that our graduates go into an extremely broad range of careers. So generally, the commonality is all about technology. Yes, some of course will go into the healthcare technology sector, but the skills and the knowledge and understanding that they're acquiring on the undergraduate program puts them in a great place to really go for any technology-related careers. So right now, popular areas are things like data science, cloud engineering, and robotics. These are big booming job markets at the moment.
Over the past year for biomedical engineering, I'm sure a lot of the work is quite practical, quite hands-on with practicums and lab work. Must have been quite challenging delivering the program. How did the faculty do it?
Well, as a department, the challenges is really what that's our business. That's what we address. So the educational challenge that we were faced, I think we really did well. And we brought in a lot of e-learning software. So you were talking earlier to Paulina about the adaptations. And an example would be software packages such as Labster or Learning Science, which were deployed by the whole of King's for the healthcare programs. These are providing virtual practical experience for the students. But for biomedical engineering, then we also brought in things like virtual electronics and other types of mechatronics and so forth. But that was also augmented by actually sending the students their lab kits to their homes. And that means that besides the virtual software and the experience that they gained from that, they actually still got the hands-on experience. And certainly a lot of our students, especially our master's students, because our undergraduate degree is either a 3 or 4 year degree, some of the 4th years and other master students in the department, they were able to continue their project work on campus with the appropriate health and safety regulations in place.
Wow, that must have been an administrative nightmare, but hearing the take-home kit, that's very impressive. So last question for you, Professor Road. I'm sure many students, especially probably more interested in the course now after your sharing, even more interested, would be wondering, in applying for this course, surely every single student would have met the minimum requirement grades because that's listed on the website. They would all write a personal statement and have a reference letter that's relatively positive. What else do you look out for? And also, how do you screen out candidates when all of them on paper seem relatively similar?
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered the main essential criteria, which are the subject requirements. And from the coming year, the subject requirements are changing in that the only required subject is going to be maths. And then we require one other STEM subject that can be any other STEM subject, and then a third subject which can be anything. And the personal statement is really important, because what the most important thing that we're looking for in our students is the motivation and to succeed, and some determination and motivation, and really the desire to really do this subject and everything that it encompasses. So that usually makes a big difference to the chances of success in the long term.
Very, very last question. Some universities actually ask for lab experience before university. Does KCL require that?
Not for biomedical engineering, no. So we don't need that, because all of these things we will develop when the students join us.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Professor Road. You've given us a lot of very good insights into the program, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of talents from Hong Kong applying to your faculty. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So, hi, Dan and Laura. How are you?
Hello. Good. Thank you. How are you?
Great. So we have both of you admissions officers, senior admissions officers, representing quite extreme spectrums from medical sciences to humanities and arts. So perhaps I'll start with Dan first with medical sciences, what we call the top subject for students in Hong Kong to go for. I know KCL is highly selective when it comes to medicine. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you screen students and what are you looking out for in the admissions process?
Yeah, of course. So for medicine at King's, as with most universities, students have to attend an interview before any offer is made. So kind of the main screening process happens before interview based on UCAT performance, which is the aptitude test that we look at, whether the student has achieved or is predicted to achieve the required grades in their level 3, so A-level or IB or Hong Kong secondary school diploma, for example. And then we also look at GCSE level grades and performance or equivalent, as well as personal statement and reference and things like that as well. So I would say the most important thing in terms of pre-interview screening for our medical students would be the UCAT and the level 3 qualifications that they have and whether they meet the subject requirements and have the correct predicted or achieved grades. But then when it gets to interview, that kind of then overwrites that initial screening, and most of our decisions are then based on interview performance. And in those interviews, we're looking at kind of a lot of different skills. We want to hear about the work experience that the students have undertaken, kind of just why they're really interested and passionate about studying medicine, and really looking for an understanding that they've thought about it as a career choice and a lifestyle choice, and that they're willing to put the work in to make that happen. And then our final decisions are mainly based on that interview performance.
So is it true that KCL has the highest requirement for UCAT score in the UK? And if you don't get at least 2,900 or 3,000, you shouldn't apply for KCL medicine?
It does. It varies a lot from year to year. So that kind of what we'd call a competitive score does vary quite a lot. And other aspects of an application can make up for a slightly lower UCAT score in some cases. But yeah, I would say that the requirements are very high, as it's kind of the most robust measure we have in that pre-interview shortlisting process. It's kind of the best measure we have of a student's aptitude for the course.
So I have a bit of a tricky question here, but also a mind-boggling question for most medical applicants. So we all know for medical applicants, you can only apply to 4 out of 5 UCAS universities, right? So that already takes out a fifth of the chances. Out of the 4, let's say historically we see KCL's average UCAS score is around 2850, right? Let's say. And the student got 2850, so they put in the application. But all that year, for some reason, it spiked up to 3,000 as a pre-screen score. So how should a student decide whether they should put in an application, despite they have met the historical average score, but end up being kind of like filtered out because of a more competitive year group?
Yeah, I think it is, like you say, it's a bit of an impossible question, partly because we as a university don't actually know what a competitive score will be in a year until we've received all the applications. So there's also the fact that the overall performance of all students around the world taking the UCAT that year might have gone up slightly, but also the cohort of applications we're receiving at King's might be slightly higher or slightly lower than the average for other universities across the country. So it is really difficult. I would say, as with all programs at King's, if you're really interested in the course at King's and the way it's taught, and kind of studying in a London university and getting a world-class education in that field, I think it's worth applying, even if you're not sure whether the UCAT score is going to quite make it, because like I said, you can make up for that to some extent with really strong personal statement, really strong qualifications, and if you are shortlisted for interview, it all really comes down to how well you perform at that interview as well.
So what makes us an outstanding personal statement? Because everyone will talk about how much they love medicine, saving people. I don't think anyone will want to say they don't want to save people becoming a doctor. And they will all have some references to their past experience. Work experience is compulsory, right?
So it's not necessarily compulsory, and it's not really something we look at in too much detail at the application stage before interview. It's something that really comes into play during the interview, because a lot of the questions can be quite difficult to answer if you don't have any experience to draw on. But especially over the last couple of years, because it has been so difficult for students to obtain work experience, we try not to disadvantage those students, and anything that they can obtain. So even if it's not directly working in a hospital, if it's some kind of care work, even if it's caring for a relative, for example, any experience they can draw on that kind of reflects and shows how passionate they are about studying medicine and caring for people would still be really useful.
So I guess quality elaboration in the statements would be important.
Yeah, definitely. And we're just kind of looking for anything that's above and beyond what we would expect from students in their general education. So it applies to all programs really at King's, but we're looking for kind of reading that they've done in addition to what is expected in their A-level or IB or other level 3 course, and any kind of lectures or extra courses they've attended to kind of go out of their way to show that they're really interested in that subject.
Right. So my last question to Dan before I move on to Laura, I have plenty of questions for Laura as well, is the interviews. Okay, so that is the ultimate decision point. Does KCL adopt the MMI question types or scenarios? How does the interview structured? How is it structured?
Yep. So for the last few years, we have had the MMI format where students move around different stations, and they see a different interviewer in each station who then gives them a score for that question. And in that, it allows us to cover kind of a really broad range of different areas. So we have questions relating to kind of interest in medicine, but also scientific ability, and then some other core skills that we're looking in our medical students. This year, because we had to remove to a remote interview format, we actually moved back to a panel structure, which we had quite a few years ago, where students would be asked all of their questions by 2 to 3 interviewers. So that could be a combination of academics and NHS representatives and other representatives relating to the programme. It's uncertain at the moment exactly what format we'll return to next year. It's likely that it'll be a hybrid situation. So we might maintain the remote interview format, but look to move back to more of an MMI structure within that. Kind of now we've had a year to develop that and kind of work out the kinks in the process.
Well, perfect. So students have to deal with MMI and MMI online the past year, so double the pressure. Thank you so much, Dan, and I'll come back in a bit. Hi, Laura.
Hello, hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much for being with us today and representing the arts and humanities disciplines. As Paulina also mentioned, these are disciplines that, interestingly, are becoming much more in demand for students in Hong Kong. In the past, it's always been sciences, social sciences, economics, medicine. But over the past few years, even I myself have seen students going for the arts and humanities degrees. Do you see any kind of strengths or weaknesses of students coming from Hong Kong applying for humanities subjects in general?
No, I don't believe there's kind of any significant strengths or weaknesses kind of from students kind of from Hong Kong or kind of any international country applying for the arts and humanities. It's quite nice to see kind of students from other countries kind of showing an interest in those subjects. And I suppose it kind of in their personal statements and things, we're looking for kind of where that interest stems from and kind of why that subject and kind of why at King's as well. And we see a lot of kind of obviously the culture in London and in England is a big draw to kind of students from around the world. So yeah, it's just nice for us to see that those programs are kind of having an increase in interest and also from kind of other areas of the globe as well.
Yeah, so for students applying from Hong Kong, do you see any subjects that are becoming more popular amongst the humanities discipline? Because it's quite a broad spectrum of subject choice and a lot of different combinations. Do you see any areas of particular interest to international students?
Yes, I think the one that springs to mind is a new program actually that was new last year, so it was new for 2020, and it's Culture, Media and Creative Industries. And so it's going into its second year now, and I think applications have nearly doubled since last year. So the more that kind of people are hearing about it, the more interest that it's spiking, and it's definitely quickly becoming one of the most competitive arts and humanities subjects, and particularly from kind of students from that side of the world as well. So yes, I'd say that is probably the most competitive one that we have. And also the modern foreign languages are seeing a bit of a spike as well in applications, so becoming a little bit more competitive in that area too.
Right. Last question for yourself. For humanities, in particular, does it matter if a student comes from IB or DSE or A-level? Because IB has a broad range of subjects, but it also includes sciences and math. DSE, maybe they have fewer exposure to humanities in general. And A-levels, they can obviously choose freely. So is there a preference from an admissions perspective, which curriculum they come from?
No, there's no preference really. It's just obviously if they're doing an arts and humanities subject, if there is a subject requirement listed on our online prospectus, then they would need to make sure that they were studying that. So if an IB curriculum can't offer that subject, or A-level or DSE, if they're unable to study that subject and they have an alternative option that does allow them to study that subject, then they should take the one that allows them to study the subject that we need. But if there is a subject that they're really interested in at King's and they see there is a subject requirement and they haven't been able to meet that because their school doesn't offer that subject, then we would encourage them to let us know that, because we obviously, where it's not possible for an applicant to study a subject, we wouldn't want to kind of that hold them back. So yeah, only really a preference if there's a subject requirement that they can't study through one qualification but can through another.
Perfect. And now the last question for you, and this is a question on a subject that is within humanities, social sciences, but also one of the most sought after subjects for Hong Kong students, and that's for law. So with law, most top 10, 12 colleges in the UK would require the LNAT, right? Again, it's always a myth. What is the competitive score for LNAT? And do you actually care about the essay?
So the LNAT, it's kind of similar to what Dan was saying about the UK. It changes year on year depending on how that cohort perform. There's no minimum threshold that we have that we're looking for, and if you don't achieve that score, that you're instantly rejected. It doesn't work like that. It does very much depend on kind of how that cohort perform overall. And so the LNAT deadline for applicants is the 20th of January, and generally we won't make any decisions before we've received all of those LNAT scores, and we'll look at them and then we'll process them all. For the LNAT essay, it will get looked at and we'll kind of come into it for where applicants might be a bit borderline kind of between getting an offer or not, but generally we look at the overall score more than the essay, and only in rare circumstances will we really kind of scan through that. But that being said, obviously applicants, it's all part of it, and they should put as much kind of effort and work into the essay as they do the rest of the LNAT test as well.
Sorry, I actually have two more questions for you. If you don't mind. So you said the LNAT, you look at the score before you give an offer, right? So does it matter if a student does the LNAT later and so apply later, or is it better for them to apply early?
So there's no, as long as applicants apply by the UCAS deadline, which is the 15th of January, although this year it was extended to 29th of January due to the pandemic. But applicants who submit by that equal consideration deadline will all be viewed equally, and there's no kind of advantage to applying earlier or later. Obviously the Oxbridge deadline is a little bit earlier, so if they're applying to any of those universities, then they'd need to kind of factor that in. But no, as long as they apply by the 15th of January, kind of the UCAS deadline, and sit their LNAT by the 20th of January LNAT deadline, then they'll have equal consideration. So they can apply not having yet sat their LNAT, as long as they've got it booked and it's on their radar and they're prepared to take that test, and they've stated that they will be taking that test. But they don't have to have sat the LNAT before they apply, providing it's by that deadline.
So even though the offers are extended on a rolling basis, and they would be extended offers, as early as mid-October onwards, if they apply in January, it doesn't really impact their chances.
No.
Oh,
no, because as long as it's by that UCAS deadline, they get equal consideration.
Okay. So last question, and this is more COVID related. So over the past 2 years, we have seen exams being cancelled, and for the 2021 cohort, all of them were cancelled, right? So did you see a kind of beyond expectation number of students being admitted for that cohort, and therefore impacting on the number of places available in the following year?
Yeah, it's obviously something that universities have had to think about and kind of take into kind of factor in when we've been making decisions. But at King's, we actually have a separate admissions operation team who monitor all the data on kind of offers and conversion rates of offer to student, and looking at with the exam cancellations and teacher assessments and kind of what might happen there. And so it is something that we are constantly monitoring and kind of reviewing decision making as the pandemic evolves. But we do commit to honouring all of the offers that we make. So even if come confirmation in August, if it was seen that actually we'd potentially gone over offers and more students were kind of meeting those conditions than we had anticipated, we would still honour those offers and kind of accommodate those extra students.
Right. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for your sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I know we have Zara here, who has been a die-hard KCL fan for the past quite a few years, from undergraduates to masters to now doing PhD and a teaching assistant. Hi, Zara.
Hello.
Hi. So you must love KCL a lot.
Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed my experience here.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about the engineering faculty from your perspective as a former student and now PhD teaching assistant? How is it different from the university's offerings?
Yeah, so I've enjoyed my time during my engineering degree, particularly as since King's is such a research-led institution, all of the lecturers are researchers who are leading in their fields. And they offer all this experience to their undergraduate students, which might not necessarily be available to students at other universities. So I've been lucky to be involved in several research projects during each kind of stage of my degree, and been lucky to kind of get that hands-on experience of actually being involved in this cutting-edge research. So I've been involved in projects from building robotic tools for surgery, to also working on 5G networks, so implementing that kind of 5G network. That was all done, that was led by King's. To now, in my PhD, I'm working on research related to COVID, so kind of detecting those structures and helping to kind of implement potential locations for vaccines and future development of that.
Right. So do students have these opportunities even at undergraduate level, or can they stay on over holidays and tag on with the master's, PhD students and do some research projects?
Yeah, so a lot of our lecturers or researchers over here, we have these studentships which are available and paid for the students to get involved in for several weeks across the summer, so it doesn't actually interrupt their teaching or exams. And they can be paid for around, I think it was 4 to 6 weeks, and they get involved with PhDs or the researchers themselves on these amazing projects.
Right. So does it help being in London to do engineering, or does it not matter?
Well, in London, you definitely do get all these amazing opportunities being based here. We have great connections, a lot of major companies over here. So particularly with the electronic engineering and general engineering side, we have connections to major telecommunications companies such as Vodafone or British Telecoms, but also some of my course mates have gone on to other major companies such as like Apple, Google, based off their locations here in London.
So some people say it's hard getting into a university, but it's easy to graduate. Is that true at KCL?
If you put in the work in, definitely. I'd say that if you definitely put in all the hard work, focus and actually put in all the effort throughout your whole time, then it will definitely pay off at the end. But I don't think that you can slack off halfway through the degree. It's always great when you kind of come out at the end of the degree, you've put in all the effort, and it's very satisfying once you have finished, graduated.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Zara. I shall move on to Valerie, who's now a current student at KCL. But thank you so much for your insights and good luck with your research. Thank you. So hi, Valerie. Thank you so much for joining us. And you shall be our last insights sharer for today. Just wondering, how did you choose KCL and why did you choose KCL back in the days when you were applying for university?
Yeah, definitely. So just a bit about my background. So I actually went to an international school in Shanghai. And then I attended the UK for my first undergraduate degree, which wasn't at King's. And then I applied for medicine after my first degree, but it's not a graduate course that I'm on. So as you would have heard, there are very limited places on the course itself, and being an international student, I just didn't consider the graduate program. I actually decided to apply to King's because I had a strong interest in psychiatry. So psychiatry is a branch of medicine separate from psychology, which isn't a medical degree. And because King's actually ranks either first or second in the world for psychiatry, I realized that I would have the best possible education if I went here. And I mean, that's really confirmed my decision. So I've met some really inspiring lecturers who are also researchers and clinicians at the same time. And in addition to that, there's a lot of other reasons. So London, obviously being the heart of the UK, some might say, has a very diverse patient population, which I thought was quite interesting. Our partner hospitals like Guy's and St. Thomas's are some of the top leading clinical hospitals in the world. So I really enjoyed that aspect as well.
Last year was very, very demanding and challenging, especially for medical students, right? Because you usually have the practicums, the bedside kind of experiences. And do you do full body dissection or dissection, right? So how was that delivered online over the past year?
That's a good question. So I actually wasn't in the year where our full body dissection was disrupted. That would be the current academic year of students. And I believe they've replaced that with a series of online small group teaching and also a separate anatomy assessment, just to make sure everyone is staying up to track. It's definitely in no way a replacement for the experience of being in the dissection room. And actually, even in this year, students could have applied to attend. We have open dissection, sessions every Wednesday afternoon, and students could still attend. You just had to go through a booking process, obviously, because it was limited in the number of students. And we also have virtual dissection tables. So in addition to all of the online support previously mentioned, some of our specimens are digitized in a 3D manner. So you can go online and sort of manipulate them digitally. So that's another way of getting that experience. And that's not to say, in future years where I'm sure COVID has less of an impact, students can always just go back into the dissection room if they do want that experience. So it's always available for you as long as you're at the medical school.
Well, that's a really futuristic way of learning how to do operations. But that's great to hear. Last question. Some students and parents actually have been raising concern about Asian discrimination in major cities abroad. Did you experience any of that? Is that really a cause of concern?
I think that's quite an interesting question because it obviously varies on the person you speak to. Personally, I've not experienced any sort of discrimination, which I'm very fortunate to say. That's obviously not the case for everyone. However, being said, we have really great security on campus, and London is a very diverse city. So I think, especially compared to some other areas in the UK, it's definitely more diverse. We have quite a large East Asian student population at King's itself. So definitely on campus, it'd be very rare to experience discrimination in that aspect. But obviously it's London is part of the world and the world has all sorts of people in it. So you really do have to just make sure you keep your wits about you, be street smart. Hopefully nothing too bad will happen.
Last question is as a general wrap up for everyone. If you were to give students who are applying in the coming 1 or 2 years some advice, what would be the advice you would extend to them now that you're in the university in London, going through COVID, a very challenging and competitive degree being medicine? Any advice you would give students?
Yeah, I definitely say try and make the most of this experience. It's not every day you get to study in London at King's. Make use of what the city has to offer, whether that is, kind of job opportunities, internships, or just entertainment opportunities. Go watch a ballet, go watch a film, explore London and explore Europe if you get a chance, because you're only young once, you're only at university once. You don't want this experience to be, purely academic. It's definitely a space for you to learn about yourself as a human being as well. So try and make it a well-rounded university experience.
Oh, that's great. I wish I had that advice when I was in university. But thank you so much, everyone. Really great insights from all of you, and really spanning across admissions, professor, and also students. So thank you so much, Paulina, for inviting everyone to join us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.